Sorry, it's got keke on.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Is it... Hello, hi. Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome back. Kia ora.
Check.
Hi, if you're at the back there, could you put your hand up to let me know if you can hear me?
Check.
Talofa lava, whawhataitele lava kia koutou. Thank you so much. Look at that, merging languages. Tēnā no tātou, tātou kua whakaraui ka anō mai, ki roto i tō tātou nei whare nei. Kia noho ai, kia ako ai, hea te kaupapa e muri, a muri ake nei. Anō reira, mā maua e whakamārama te kaupapa kia koutou. So fam, I hope y'all have taken your waka to interesting places today. Interesting places as in all the spaces and the breakout sessions and the booklets that you all have. I know that I was enjoying connecting with each and every one of those special people that I met on the in-betweens, which is the space that I sit in the best. I was connecting with whānau from all the way up to Taitokero, connected with whānau from all the way down in Otautahi, so I got a real good vibe for what y'all are about, and I have a story that I'd like to share. And this story comes all the way from the top of the North Island, and it reminded me of why I do the mahi that I do, and may resonate with a lot of you in this room. There was this young wahine who had no understanding of the health system and was a teen mum at the time. And so she had just given birth to her baby, and her baby had been born with heart complications. And the story from this wahine was, when she entered into that system, there was no, she wasn't reflected in any part of it, first off. But secondly, all the people that held positions of power in that they knew what was going on with her, with the health of her baby, and what the whole situation looked like, were just talking at her. They were just throwing words at her, and she didn't understand anything. Until one day, because this woman identifies as Māori, until one day this nehi Māori, this Māori nurse, found her in her room crying, and she walked over to her and she's like, babe, what's wrong? And she said, I don't understand anything. They're just talking at me. I don't understand any of these words. I don't know if my baby's going to die. I don't know what's happening. And then the nurse changed her life at that moment by not only educating her on everything that was happening with her baby, bridging that gap from not understanding to understanding, providing her with the tools, the knowledge, the education, and the resources required for her to understand how she's going to walk in this world with her baby. But this woman stayed with her after her shift finished till the next morning so that she could ensure the transition of the new nurse coming in to look after this woman and her baby would continue to uphold and maintain the mana that she had shared with her. And I'd like to think that this is this story could be applied right across the spectrum, but when I look at youth work, that's what you are to whānau out there who are in need of change or who have been subjected to a system that doesn't speak the reo of the people that are within it. Y'all are youth workers, right? You work with young people, which means that you are the people that are the bridge between not understanding and understanding. You are the vessels in which you are the vessels that carry the education, the tools, and the resources for our young people so that they can actualize their potential and have some autonomy. Nō reira e te iwi, I'd like it if we could all raise some noise for this nehi Māori for sharing her story, for the nehi Māori in the story that changed this young person's life and became a translator of worlds, a facilitator of connections. And I also want this to be a moment for y'all to celebrate yourselves as well. For if you are doing the job that you guys know how to do, and if you're being operated by passion and by aroha and by development, then you will resonate with the story too. So can we give a big, huge tihei mauri ora to that, everybody?
Thanks, Cam. Check. Thank you, Cam. One of the things about us being in this space is to make sure that we look after our health and well-being. And this next section, we're going to bring on two organizations, LeVa and Hiringa Hauora, which is the health promotion agency, to run some well-being exercises. But for those of you who walked in and were like, I'm just sitting here the whole time, well, we're not. We're going to get you to stand up because we're about to dance. We've got some young people, Finau Vea, Luciane Valo, Noa Tauti, and we are going to dance, and then they're going to show us the moves, and we're going to copy them. And like, we can see you not standing up, so can you just stand up where you are, please? We got some music. Can we turn the...
Sweet. All right. Can you hear me? Sweet. Okay, I know you're not Beyonce or Paris Hilton, but like, just give me your best, and yeah, that's all we can ask for, okay? So all eyes on me.
Whoever dances the best, you get a t-shirt. Let's go.
Okay, now moving side. We'll keep it simple. Moving side to side. Yeah, we're moving side to side. Now clap your hands. Now, yo. Now let's ready? Hey. Ready? Now a little bit old school. Now let's wash the dishes. Hey, oh, drive the car. Hey. Okay. Now let's get back side to side. Moving our heads. Now clap your hands. Yeah. Okay, I see some good people right there. Come on, let's get them some shirts. All right. Now going back. Come on. How low can you go? How low can you go? Let's get back up. Yeah, ready? And then 1, 2, 3, and let's go. Hey. Let's go. Okay. Now this one, do it. Yeah, you know that one. Let's take it back old school. Little bit of just act here, come on.
Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you, Final. Woo! Shot team. All right. Who needs an asthma pump? Me. Okay, so I'm going to bring LeVa back on because they're going to kind of zone us into the kaupapa of mental health and taking care of ourselves, which is something us on the front line, we need to learn how to do. So I'll bring back Luciane Valu and Anai Tuifau to talk us through an exercise.
Big round of applause, everybody.
Malo lovely soi for mo malangi mama. My name is Anai Tuifau. I'm part of the team from LeVa, which is a small Pacifica NGO based in Auckland. And we're going to go through this part as just a few mindfulness strategies, just to sort of like better equip ourselves on how to deal with a little bit of stress, anxiety, really to reset ourselves. As babies or as newborn, we're born to actually use the full capacity of our lungs. But somewhere along the way, we sort of like don't use it as much. But what we're going to do now is, this is a little exercise that we do in our workshops with our tupulango, our youth. And if you can just please, please, to enlighten me by just putting anything that you have in front of you just aside. And we're going to try this in a mass group. This is probably the biggest group that we're going to try our little exercise, but it's really about just box breathing exercise, just to reset. So please, if you can, just relax a little bit, especially after the dance, and we'll center ourselves. So it is just going to be 4 seconds. So we're just going to inhale for 4 seconds, and then hold for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 4 seconds. Slow exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold for 4 seconds. Okay, we're going to do that 3 times, and I'll count us through in 3, 2, 1, and inhale, and hold, 2, 3, and exhale, and hold, 2, 3, and inhale. Nice, team. And hold, 2, 3, and exhale. Doing good. And hold, 2, 3. And last one, inhale, and hold, 2, 3, and exhale. And hold, 2, 3. Man, that's mean. Give yourselves a round of applause. That's awesome. Well done, team.
Awesome. Sweet, so I hope you're feeling a little more relaxed, a little more grounded. We're going to move into our next exercise, which is called growing gratitude. Now, as you may know, counting your blessings can help your mental health. And as we like to say at LeVa, when you learn how to care for your mental health, it creates mental wealth. Yeah, don't steal it, it's trademarked. Sweet, so all we're going to do is answer 3 simple questions that'll show up on our screen. So grab a piece of paper or answer it on your notes on your phone. And they are, what 3 things are you grateful for today? What are you most looking forward to tomorrow? And who is one person I should have said thank you to today? Just give you a minute to think about it. Cool. As you're thinking about it, we'll just go to our next slide so I can explain what our digital whala is. So when we travel, we like to bring our whala with us, but sometimes it's hard, so we're digitally savvy. We've got a digital whala here, and we like to bring it with us to help facilitate our talanoa in workshops. So the Tongan proverb we use when we facilitate is "Fofola e whala, kai talanoa e kainga." And that formally translates to roll out the mat to dialogue with kin. And for us in this space, in general, it means roll out the mat so we can talanoa with each other. So tala means to talk, noa means not. So generally speaking, we're going to talk about anything and everything. Awesome. So this is your invitation now to turn to someone next to you, maybe share one of your answers for the questions that were up there on screen. And we have Ella and a few of our other helpers here that are going to give out some poly packs up in the front. Turn to someone next to you. Ella and some of our team will come out and give out some poly packs for your participation. It's got a gaming mouse pad in it. We've got atumai teas, got other LeVa goodies as well. All right. Hey, thanks for sharing, team. Yo. Done? Okay. All right. Thank you so much for participating. Now, those 2 things, breathing exercise and growing gratitude, those are 2 mindfulness strategies that you can take with you anywhere. Use it in your workshops, use it for yourself after a full day of work. It'll just help you ground yourself, become more relaxed, and just get you a little more in zone for whatever you need to do next. Thank you so much for having us, and have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
How's everybody doing now after that exercise? That sounds peaceful. How's everybody feeling after that exercise? Now, that's what I love to hear, whānau. I just want to jump onto the Waka of Hauora and get you all to look into those bags, those really fancy tote bags with Involve on the front that you've received at registration. If you could open those bags and look to the bottom for this big, giant, square, bricky-shaped thing, it's a box of cards. Do you want to grab those cards out, whānau? Yeah. I see some whānau with cards. Little bit of an interesting story about them cards. Pick Your Best Card was developed by youth and youth workers with youth and youth workers, and the young people actually decided on how the game was meant to be played. It's actually been played outside at the health promotion agency, the Hiringa Hauora stall. But to talk a little bit about the kaupapa, what's all the fancy information that's going on at the stall, brochures, etc., other types of amazing resources, we've got Kiana and Hayley from Te Hiringa Hauora. So could you please make some noise as they come to the stage, everybody? Distraction.
Alofa lava, kia ora koutou everyone. I'm Kiana and this is Hayley, and we are from Te Hiringa Hauora, the health promotion agency. So you may have not heard of us before, but we are the face behind the mental wellbeing campaigns like depression.org and The Lowdown. And the work that we do, we place children, young people and communities at the core of what we do.
Te Hiringa Hauora has a equity focus and uses diversity-informed practice to develop the work that we're doing. And we have a specific focus on Ngāti Māori, young Pacific people, and people who are experiencing significant inequities. Our strategy focuses on young people as they navigate their way through key transition areas, such as those who are entering or leaving high school, or those who are facing other areas where they may experience more inequity. For the future to be brighter, our work has a real focus on key wellbeing drivers to enhance young people's belonging, connectedness, and sense of identity.
So come by and visit us at our stall. We will be, because we need your help, because at the moment we're redeveloping The Lowdown, and this is a website where young people and adults can go to if they're having a hard time, and we want to develop it so that it's more relevant to the pressures that young people face today. And we'll also be playing Play Your Best Card. So if you haven't heard of this game before, we think it's a great game that you can play with young people, because it opens up that conversations with them to talk about challenging topics, and it also creates a safe space for these conversations to happen. So yeah.
Yeah, so once again, come and pop by and have a play of Play Your Best Cards with us. As Cam already said, you've all got it in your packs, and you probably should know a little bit about it already. So come by and come have a chat. Thanks.
Need your feedback. Thanks.
Thank you, Kiana, Hayley, and Luciane for sharing that with us. Our next guest speaker is, put your hands up if you like seafood. Yeah? Yeah. Prawns? Lobster? Man, we're not going to have that for lunch tomorrow. Sorry, guys. But our next speaker is really loves kina. So who likes kina? Mean. Dr. Melinda Weber is a beautiful wahine toa. She is the Associate Professor at the University of Auckland, and she will come and share how she works with young people or the things that she researches for our young people. So without further ado, I'll get you to give her a warm round of applause for Dr. Melinda Weber. Thank you.
We are te patai, me ko wai a haue. He uri no rahiri, taura moko i runga e. Tēnā tātou e te whare. Nei aku mihi mata kui atu, kia koutou i tēnei ahi pō. Nei hoki aku mihi ki te tangata whenua, tēnei rohe, te ati awa, taranaki ki te upoko o tika, tēnā koutou katoa. E tū whakaiti tēnei uri no Ngāpuhi nui tonu, no te arawa hoki I mua I a koutou. I started this kōrero with a song, not because I'm a particularly good singer, but because in my family, women always sing. They sing to greet you, they sing to farewell you, they sing when you're born, they sing when you die. And when a wahine lifts her voice in song, or in karanga, she pierces the arai, that curtain between the living and the dead, and the gods and us, and invites them into the room with us. So whilst a tānea's voice speaks to the living, a woman's voice, the voice of a wahine, can speak to the gods and can speak to the dead and bring them into the room. So I invite all of our gods and all of our tupuna into this room with us today. Today I want to talk to you about the importance of counter-narratives. Narratives that speak back to the negative ones that our babies see and hear and read about themselves every day in the mainstream media, in online, and even in the books that they're given to read in schools. I want to talk a little bit about how we, as people who work with young people and children, can be teina to our communities. Quite often in our work, we're positioned as tuakana, those who know more, those who are working for or on behalf of. But actually, I've found over many years that quite often I'm the teina in the situation. I'm there as the learner. And that those young people sitting in front of me, all those kaumātua or community members, know far more about the kaupapa than I could ever dream to know. So I hope to encourage us today to position ourselves as teina in our work. And I want to riff off the idea, not rip off, riff off, Rod's awesome idea this morning, he and his kahui talked about the notion of whaiwāhitanga, because the work that I'm speaking about today too is about chasing place, belonging, and the importance of connectedness. So I'm going to start today's kōrero with my mother's whakapapa as a means of locating myself in a culturally appropriate manner, to illustrate the ways that one's identity can be a powerful and enduring aspect of self, and to emphasise the importance of these identity matters to our work as educators and kaitautoko. I do this as a means of asserting that every student, whānau and kaiako, has their own whakapapa, history and mana. I do this to illustrate the pedagogical potential of whakapapa narratives for what can be taught and learnt in educational contexts and beyond. So my mother is Sharon Kake, and she descends from iwi throughout Te Taitokerau. We whakapapa to the Larama whānau of Te Pātū in Pāmapuria, the Kake whānau of Peheawari in Ngāti Hau, which is near Whangarei. Shout out to my Whangarei peeps in the audience. And to the Kingi whānau of Otiria, which is Ngāti Hine country. I descend from revered rangatira, such as Sir Heke Nukumai Busby of Muri Whenua, a world-renowned expert in bridge building, waka voyaging and traditional navigation, and seafaring. Papa Hek built 26 waka using mātauranga Māori, learnt from other tohunga like Taupuhi Eruera. He knew to select trees that stood in a southwestern direction on a ridge facing the harsher weather. The side exposed to the rough weather was said to grow more slowly and would be denser, and thus more suitable for the hull of the waka. The density of the wood at the bottom of the boat would add stability. After chopping the tree down, the heavier side could also be determined by floating it in water, because the heavier side would be at the bottom. Papa Hek was a stargazer, a wayfinder, a weaver of traditional and contemporary engineering, science, and navigational wisdoms. Rawiri Tauwhanga, the chap with the very dapper hat, of Ngāti Tautahi and Ngāpuhi, who was one of the many rangatira from Te Taitokerau who flourished economically during the early to mid-19th century. This time period was known as the Golden Age for Māori economically, because hapu and rangatira featured heavily in both domestic and international business and enterprise. Like many rangatira of the time, Taiwhanga held multiple positions in the early 1800s. He was one of Hongihika's contemporaries and participated in many war expeditions alongside him. He was known as an exceptionally brave rangatira, and he saved Ngāpuhi rangatira Moka during the Battle of Te Eka Ranganui, near Waka. Alongside participating in battle, Taiwhanga was also honing his horticultural and agricultural knowledge, both on the Kirikiri mission station and then in Sydney with Samuel Marsden. Once back in Aotearoa, Taiwhanga worked at another mission station and grew a flourishing garden, while his wife Matarawa of Te Arawa operated a laundry business. 5 years later, Taiwhanga was simultaneously running a school and went into business himself, establishing a farm east of Te Kaikohekohe. Before long, Taiwhanga had successfully established a thriving farm and was selling produce, mostly butter, to a merchant in the Bay of Islands who transported it overseas. This made Rawiri Taiwhanga Aotearoa's first commercial dairy farmer. He was industrious, enterprising, a seeker of knowledge, and an astute businessman. And finally, I descend from Hine Amaru of Ngāti Hine, a rangatira of great mana who was famed for her fearless leadership of her iwi, her agricultural skills, and her tenacity. Hine Amaru's mother was Hauhaua, who was the daughter of Uenukukuare and the granddaughter of the famous Ngāpuhi tupuna I sung about at the beginning of this presentation, Rahiri. Her father was Torongare of Ngāti Kahu. After Torongare fell out with his wife's ngaitamatea relations, they left Waimamaku in search of fertile land, travelling from Te Taitamatane, the west coast, or the Hokianga, across land to Te Taitamawahine, the east coast, known as Peo Whairangi, or the Bay of Islands. While there, Hine Amaru set fire to some dead rata, trees, to warm the group and to clear the land in preparation to test the quality of the soil. The place was called Paparata. Here, Hine Amaru planted kumara seeds in 10 mounds, a gardening technique called ahuahu. She planted the kumara in 3 different ways: rāpiki, with the stem facing east, retu, facing north, and ratou, facing west, to test the impact of the elements on the growth of the kumara. The following autumn, as the whānau returned from gathering seafood in Kohetane, Hine Amaru stopped in at Paparata to check on the kumara. She was overjoyed and relieved to see abundant crops and immediately set about digging up the 10 mounds. She placed the kumara in a kete and took them to Torongare to discuss the quality of her produce. After seeing and tasting the kumara, Torongare declared that the land was perfect for permanent settlement. Hei tā te waiata a Henare Māhanga, rawa ko Moe Milne. Hine Amaru, te tupuna kai arahi, I te hapu o Ngāti Hine, I roto wai o mio, ka puta mai I te kōpu o te whenua, he kumara, he tangata. Hine Amaru, our ancestor of the hapu of Ngāti Hine, in Waihomio. She birthed out of the womb of the earth, the kumara and our iwi, Ngāti Hine. And you'll know that if you come from Ngāti Hine, quite often we refer to each other as kumara. Now, I use my mother's whakapapa here to illustrate that if we want to educate in ways that accelerate student cultural pride, academic success and engagement at school, we need programs of learning that acknowledge and celebrate the lofty aspirations, histories and whakapapa of all of our students. So while I'm here today talking about Māori students, because that is where my research lays, and I'm talking about students in schools because that's where my research is based, all of this applies to the mahi you do in the youth development sector. I need you to make those hononga for yourselves during this presentation. So we need to make links to their whakapapa and the communities they carry on their shoulders with them to your organisations every day. Sadly, I never learned anything about Ngāpuhi, our rich history of scientific endeavour, or our iwi heroes at school. And I should have. I was schooled in those areas. The curriculum should have been localised to ensure that I learnt as much about Māori entrepreneur Rawiri Taifanga or engineer and master navigator Heck Busby as I did about physicist Sir Ernest Rutherford, suffragist Kate Shepherd, and British cartographer James Cook. We need to ensure that Māori know that they descend from greatness too. We need to arm them with a powerful and promising narrative about who they descend from and who they are now and who they can become. A narrative that speaks back to the negative stereotypes and ruinous stories about Māori that they see every day in the mainstream media. Now in Aotearoa we have a really important educational policy called Kahikitia, which stipulates that all Māori students should have the opportunity to achieve educational success as Māori, which means staying Māori as they progress through the education system. However, my research has shown that many mainstream classrooms don't speak the language of Māori students. They rarely include their ways of learning in the curriculum, and they almost never hold Māori ancestors up as role models of success or academic excellence. And yet we know, by way of our whakapapa, our cultural narratives, and our distinguished history of oratory, that we descend from a long line of academic excellence. And the discourses within Māori communities themselves don't focus on academic underachievement and deficit either. Instead, the focus is on the strengths, wisdom, and opportunities our tai tamariki need to flourish. Māori families have told me that they want their children to learn an educational context that teach them that their ancestors were exceptional, tenacious, courageous, and clever. These concepts are critical in the reshaping of a new curriculum for Aotearoa, which is happening as we speak. Māori students must come to believe that their knowledge systems, language and culture have as much value in modern times as they did in the past. We must continue to use mātauranga āhapu and whakapapa narratives to teach Māori that they descend from greatness. So, in 2017, I was blessed to win a grant called the Rutherford Discovery Fellowship. And they award 10 of these grants a year, and for the many years that they'd been giving it out before me, they had never awarded it to a Māori, and they had never awarded it to, had awarded once before to someone in education. So I took this opportunity and ran with it because I wanted to design something for our kaiako, our akona, and our whānau in schools that was strengths-based, that was actually shone a light on what was working inside our schools. Because despite the negative things that we read in the newspaper and see on the television, there are many good things happening in schools. There are lots of kids thriving. There are lots of whānau wrapping themselves around their babies to be successful. And there are kaiako who are committed to helping every child reach their potential. Unfortunately, for some of us, we operate in worlds where we don't see that as much as people like me get to see it. So I designed a study called Kia Tūranga Tira Ai. And Kia Tūranga Tira Ai means to stand in one's chiefliness, to stand like the chief we were born to be. And it focuses on what it takes for young people to live, to succeed, and to thrive in education. So in this particular study, I spoke to and surveyed, in particular, students, whānau, and teachers throughout all of Aotearoa. And I focused on the following questions. What motivates students to engage and persist at school? Is it because they want a flash house and a flash car when they're older? Is it because they love learning, or they have a teacher that they just love being with at school? Or is it because they want to make their whānau proud? What is it that drives kids to go to school every day? And how, if we know that, how can we do more of that in terms of our motivation and our encouragement for young people in schools? What are their attitudes towards schools? Do they think they're good learners? Do they think they pay attention? That they're good listeners and that they join in when we're doing group work? And I can tell you now, as I finish collecting the data, that our kids don't know what their attitudes are towards school. In fact, if we ask them, they're more likely to say they're bad, because the only time teachers ever speak to kids about their attitudes towards school is when something is going wrong. Nearly every young person, particularly secondary school student survey, asks teachers to affirm them. Tell me, waha, verbally, that you believe that I can do this, that you're proud of me, that with your support and small steps, we will get there together. They said that a lot of teachers communicate that or think that they're communicating that wairua, okay? By osmosis or, spiritually, okay? But our kids need you to say verbally to them, you are proud of them, that you believe that they can be successful, that they're good listeners, that when you give them homework and they do it, it makes your job 1,000,000 times easier. They actually need that affirmation, and that once they hear you affirm them for those things, they will do more of it because they want to please you. The same goes for parenting. We ask them what job they want to do in the future. And this is something that I've realised we haven't asked kids very much in research in Aotearoa. What is it? What do you want to be in the future? Who do you want to be? Do you want to go to university? Do you want to go to Polytech? Do you want to do an apprenticeship? Just get a job? And all of the answers to these things differed by region. If you were in a region where there was a university, somewhere close by, you're more likely to say university was one of the options for you. Okay, if there's no university in your town, then those children are less likely to choose that, and they're more likely to choose the jobs that their parents do. Hara te rā i te raru, that's not a problem. Those parents are doing amazing things in their communities. But we must make university and the idea, the imaginary of university, more real to these kids by making sure that they're able to visit those spaces. Sending people out from universities into schools is not enough to give kids a sense of what those places are for them. That's particularly true of kids in the north who will bypass Auckland University to go to Waikato, for example, because it's a smaller town like theirs. Then, so not only are they scared of the university, they're quite often frightened, and their whānau, of the big city and what that might mean for them. We ask them to tell us about their favourite teachers and what those teachers do that help them to learn. So for the younger children, the primary age children, and I'm telling you about all of these questions because I want you to think about the questions you ask students. I don't want anyone to be asking kids about why they didn't make it, about what it was about that teacher that didn't work. I want you to think about asking them, think about your favourite teacher. What did he or she or they do to help you be successful at school? Because that's what I'd like to do in my practice with you. I'd like to do more of that. So with the younger children, we ask them to tell us who their favourite teacher was and describe that teacher in 5 words. And the very little kids, the 5 and 6-year-olds, they could answer that question quite easily, but they're very literal. So my favourite teacher is Mr. Jones. He's bald. He thinks he's funny, but he's not really funny. He wears a pink shirt. He's wrinkly, but not too wrinkly. So they gave answers like they were very literal. And as you moved up the school with the ages of the kids, they were able to talk more about the teacher's practice. Central to all of that was relationships. That's of absolutely no surprise to any of us in the room. But actually, and with the whānau, they talked a lot about that all they wanted teachers to do was love their babies. Love them like they're your babies. Love them like they're your mokopuna. How would you deal with that tricky situation if that was your mokopuna as opposed to somebody else's mokopuna? We asked them to talk about their whānau and what their whānau do to support them to learn and to stay engaged and stay persistent at school. And every child could talk about something that their family did that helped them. Kids are very aware from a young age of the sacrifices their parents make to ensure that they come to school with lunch, whether it's a healthy one or not. They're appreciative of lunch. Whether what their family does to collectively to ensure that they can have a uniform, school bag, stationery, that if they needed tutoring in a particular area, that the family would work together to ensure that that child had tutoring, encouragement, telling them to never give up, helping them to negotiate tricky relationships, all of those kinds of things. I keep saying we, but it was me who was doing most of this work. What role does culture play in their motivations to succeed? Because for the last 15 or so years, I focused on the role of culture to children's engagement and achievement at school. So what does being Māori even matter at school? What does being Samoan or Chinese or Korean, does it even matter at school? It absolutely matters. And it matters for everyone. It matters for Pākehā. It matters because race, ethnicity, culture divides us in schools. It changes the way teachers teach us. It changes the way teachers speak to us and group us. It changes where we hang out. It affects where we hang out at school at lunchtime. Okay, so race plays, or ethnicity, whatever you want to call it. We called it culture in the study because that was the word that students understood. But actually, in reality, notions of race and ethnicity and culture, they're all entangled. You can't separate them in terms of our lived experience. So culture was really important. We asked them 3 questions. 1, what is it about your culture that makes you feel proud? So it was an open-ended question. And then 2 other questions: how proud do you feel of your culture, your cultural group, and how proud do you think others are of your cultural group? And then the last question we asked in the survey was about role models. And this has come to be my most interesting and important area of research. I think it's where I'm going to sit for the next 5 or so years, because I've realised that every child has a role model. The older they get, the less likely they are to nominate role models. Okay? The more removed they feel from others around them. But I asked the question, tell me about a role model in your life, someone you aspire to be with, somebody that makes you feel good about yourself, and describe that person in 5 words. And one of the most beautiful kōrero I ever listened to was one young man who said, my role model is my koro, my grandfather. My koro is the best pig hunter in Murupara. And when my koro goes pig hunting, everyone on my street gets a kai. He cuts it up, we have to deliver it to all the nannies up and down on my kai. Everyone in Murupara loves my koro. I want to be like him. And I said, so what 5 words would you use to describe your koro? He says, well, my koro's a scientist, because you can't be a good pig hunter unless you understand the behaviour of pigs and pig dogs. You have to understand the ngahere, and you have to understand the weather. If you don't understand those things, you're going to be a stink pig hunter. Okay? My koro knows all of those things. My koro is fit and healthy, because you have to be to chase a pig through the forest for half a day. My koro is generous. My koro is humble. That's who that young man wanted to be. That's what success as Māori means for that young man, no matter what he pursues in life. Because he wasn't talking about growing up and being a pig hunter necessarily. He was talking about growing up and living the qualities of his grandfather. He actually went on to be an engineer. This young man, he went to Auckland University and studied engineering, and he's back home and he works as kind of a conduit between the iwi, Ngāti Whakaue, and the local council. He lives with his nana and koro. They moved from Murupara to the big smoke, Rotorua. So that's what the study was about. And today, I just want to share with you 3 kind of points of interest, because I could talk for 6 days. I could do this whole conference talking about the stuff from the survey. And the reason I could do it is because when I proposed the study, I said, and my mate Nick Mason is in the audience here, and she helped me prepare this thing, and we thought, 2,000-3,000 people, if they fill it in, that'll be choice. We'll be so lucky. But when I went out and did this particular survey, because it was strengths-based, I ended up with nearly 30,000 participants. Schools were hungry. had to stop it because I was like drowning in data. And now school's asking me to do it again for a second round. But you know what? The reason why this was so successful, well, there was a number of reasons, but the first one is because it was strengths-based. Schools, teachers were like, yeah, I'll fill in something about my hopes and aspirations for tamariki. I'll absolutely write about what I think works best. I'll absolutely write about the things that work for me in terms of engaging in genuine relationships with whānau and iwi. Whānau were like, oh, somebody asking me what I do and asking me to give them advice. Wonderful, I'll fill it in. Very rarely in any study around the world do you get more than 7,000 people, whānau members, completing a survey about their hopes and dreams for their tamariki. So I encourage you, those people doing research, thinking about designing surveys, to flip your questions around. Remember that we are the teina and they are the tuakana, and that if we position our surveys in those ways, we gather rich data. The other thing that made a big difference in the study was that every school, every iwi, kahui ako community, whatever it was, got their data back so that they could wānanga the data themselves. Every school got a pre and post wānanga with me where I talked about the aspirations of the project and why I thought it was important, and then I went back and reported what I thought stood out in their data. So I established genuine relationships with those communities that mean that now I am their researcher for the rest of my life. And that's great, but that's also stressful. But it's more great than stressful. So that was what they're about. So I just want to talk to you about a few points of interest in the study today. The first one is that Pākehā cultural pride decreases as students get older. So you'll see there that I've broken up, and I've just tried to present it as simply as I can, that for the Māori students, it's a bit hard to read that yellow, I apologise, but 70% of Māori students said that they felt very proud of their culture, okay, primary-aged Māori students. And as we went down, it dropped down slightly until 50% of all Māori students in years 11 to 13 in the senior years felt very proud of their cultural identity. But if you combine that with the mostly proud, then you've captured most of those students. If you look at the Pākehā kids in the study, self-identified as Pākehā, starts off with 63% of primary-age Pākehā kids feel very proud of their culture, and it drops 40% by the time they reach the end of secondary school to only 23% of kids who felt proud of their culture. Now, we have our problem on our hands if we have a significant portion, the dominant portion of society, who are unwilling to have conversations about culture, who feel shy, who feel shamed, who feel guilty about talking about culture. Everyone deserves to feel proud of who they are, and to my mind. Everyone deserves it. Everyone deserves to know the true history and to understand the consequences of our history, but everyone deserves to be able to articulate what culture means for them. And I'm not just talking about ethnicity with culture. For many of us in this room, who are Māori, who are Pacifica, who are visibly different, we wear our culture on our face, we wear our ethnicity on our face every day. Okay? But there are other people in this room who might define themselves culturally via the fact that they come from, as one kid said in the study, we're a horsey family. We ride horses, we breed horses, we sell horses. That's our culture. You know? Other people talked about wakaama. We are wakaama whānau. Okay? That is our culture. That is what we do. Everything we do in life is centred around our wakaama whānau. Okay? So culture isn't just about ethnicity. But most of the Pākehā kids in the study, as they got older, they became less willing or less able to talk about their cultural identity. And I was really interested in this, and I thought, well, what's happening? Because we do talk about culture in schools. And then I looked into the parent data. And when I looked into the parent data, 34% of all the parents of Pākehā children could not or would not identify a positive aspect of their child's cultural identity. Now, this wasn't a loaded question. This was just, tell me about a positive aspect of your child's cultural identity. And man, did they get wild with me. You bloody Maoris always want to talk about culture. We're sick of it. This are the things that they're writing on the page. There's some of the less sweary ones up there, okay, because I got a lot of sweary answers in there. But they talked about cultural identity is not important to us. All ethnicity should be equal. There's nothing at the moment. She feels this is an embarrassing time to be European. There were a number of respondents to my survey who crossed every Māori word out on the entire survey if they filled it out on hard copy. Whānau, Māori, Pākehā, wrote New Zealand, European, in caps, all caps, instead. So, you know, if our kids are coming from homes where parents can't have this conversation, how are we supposed to reconcile ourselves here in Aotearoa, in multiple groups? The o purepure, the multicoloured beauty of Aotearoa. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this pattern because as New Zealand becomes increasingly ethnically diverse, we're going to need to know more about who we are, and we're going to need to know how to articulate that. We're not going to become this big melting pot that some of our whanaunga sang so beautifully about in the 1980s. It's actually, you know, many people moving to here in Aotearoa, they want to retain their cultural selves, not assimilate. So, what we need to do is make sure that our rangatahi, as part of all of our programs, know who they are, know how they belong and where they belong. They also need to know who they're not. You know, this is who I am, but this is who I am not inside of that group. Because when I say I'm Māori, that's this big. When I say I'm Ngāpuhi, that's this big. Then I say I'm Ngāti Hau, and everyone goes, ooh, whangarei, okay. You know? Yeah. And so it's about all of the ways that we belong to our communities, and not just our ethnic communities, our church communities, our sporting communities, etc. And how they relate to other groups of people in those spaces is really important. Not just so that they're learning about themselves, but themselves in relation to others in those same spaces. We need to continue to help them feel proud about who they are, where they come from, and what their culture has to offer the world. As the world around them diversifies, this is going to become more important. We also need teachers and kai tautoko in our youth development organisations to understand and believe that culture deeply influences the way rangatahi learn. It's not a side issue. Being Māori is my primary identity in the world. Okay, it's not something I put on and off depending on the context that I'm in. It is me. And we need people to speak to rangatahi, speak to their true selves, and allow them to wear those. And I know I'm speaking to the converted here, but when I go into schools, this is a revelation for some kaiakoa. What do you mean, teach to their cultural selves? You know? And I would really suggest that schools and other organisations stocktake what they do differently to teach diverse rangatahi, to engage hard-to-reach whānau, and to incorporate local hapu and iwi knowledges and expertise into their curriculum. Quite often there's lots of pockets of good practice going on in organisations, but nobody's brought it all together. Nobody's created this master list with names beside them so that we can go and learn from each other. So that's my first point of interest, quite a big one to my mind. The second point of interest, it's not too bad for you fellas, is that we've done some cluster analyses on the data. I don't expect you to read all of this, okay? But we've done some cluster analysis. We have so much data, there's a million different ways we can analyse the data. And so we've done some cluster analyses on the data to kind of understand how particular groups of students cluster together and what those things suggest about the students. And what we've been able to do is create a kind of, what's the word, it's just slipped out of my mind, a topology, if you like, of different types of students at school. And we've tried to position these different types of students positively. So the intention is to suggest that every child turns up to school to learn. We believe that. Every child wants to learn, wants to be successful at school. And what we've been able to do is to understand students who are flourishing, thriving, striving, surviving, or languishing. Okay, those are our groups in this particular thing. We're just doing these analyses now. But Māori students in particular who are flourishing prosper at school because they are highly motivated to achieve, so they actually believe that they can achieve, and are behaviourally and emotionally engaged, so they know the behaviours that they have to show at school, and they can regulate their own emotions when they're at school. They report the highest levels of self-reported achievement, so they believe that they can be successful at school. They have high cultural pride. So, we've been talking for a long time about, Māori kids who feel good about themselves culturally are more likely to be successful at school. This data shows that that is actually true. Cultural pride matters to engagement and achievement at school. And high perceptions of cultural status. So they actually believe other people are proud of their cultural group as well. However, and they report they reported lower numbers of people in their support networks. So these flourishing kids didn't necessarily need role models. They kind of had the goods, the street smarts and the school smarts, if you like, to know how to get on with things at school. Now, the flourishing Māori kids, we've only done the primary analyses at the moment, primary school analyses. The Māori kids who are in the flourishing group are more likely to be female in years 1 to 6 as opposed to intermediate, and from low decile schools. We're trained to believe that kids are better off at high decile schools. Māori kids who are flourishing are more likely to be in low decile schools. They're more likely to perceive strong family and peer support networks, not necessarily teacher support, whānau and peer support. And they have only average motivation to get a job or attend university after secondary school. So university for kids who are flourishing is not necessarily the end point. Neither is working. They're more likely to be intrinsically motivated. They're more likely to be engaged at school because of sports, groups, extracurricular groups that they're involved in, and so on. So I'm not going to go through all of these groups here, but I will leave the PowerPoint with Involve if somebody wants to look at them in more detail later. But I do want to go down to languishing. I'll go to surviving. Students who are surviving are trying to balance the competing demands of school. They have slightly below average motivation and emotional engagement, but well below behavioural engagement. So these kids do not know the behaviours required for school. Okay? They haven't learnt them yet. Or they are choosing, in some cases, not to engage because those behaviours don't align with how they see themselves. They report low levels of self-reported achievement and cultural pride and average perceptions of cultural status. They have average numbers of people in their support networks. Surviving Māori students, though, are more likely to be male in years 1 to 6 in low decile schools. They perceive that they have high levels of teacher and whānau support, but low peer support, which may account for some of the behavioural issues that are going on for them at school. They have high motivation to get a job and average motivation to attend university. And then we go down to the languishing students who are becoming apathetic and dissatisfied at school. See, we're not blaming the students here. This is about the conditions of school. They have extremely below average levels of motivation, behavioural and emotional engagement. They are checking out of school already. These are primary age kids, okay? And there were 662 of them in this particular cohort, just Māori primary age kids. They report the lowest levels of self-reported achievement, which means they don't believe that they can be successful. They have come to understand that they can't learn. That's what they've been taught. And they've come to believe it, sadly. They have low levels of cultural pride, and they perceive that others don't care about their cultural identity either. They have the lowest numbers of people in their support networks, so they're more likely to have none. So Māori students in this cohort are more likely to be male in years 1 to 8, so very evenly spread across primary and intermediate schools, and from low decile schools. They perceive high levels of whānau support, but low to almost no teacher support. And they have average motivation to get a job They have average motivation to get a job and attend university after secondary school. Now, the interesting thing with this data is that the more you etch down the typology towards the surviving and languishing students, the more they want to go to university and get a job. The kids who are flourishing and thriving don't really care about university and a job. They care about learning. The more you go down towards the languishing, the more likely those kids are to have whānau support, but not teacher support. There's some interesting stuff in this data. But what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that our kids and our whānau need regular, timely, and accurate achievement data. They don't know whether they're doing well or not. Many of them can't answer the question about their academic efficacy or self-reported achievement because they simply don't know. No one's told them. Because they didn't turn up to school enough, they've been locked out of the KMA student management portal. Or their teachers have said to them, you didn't turn up to the teacher meeting, so you've missed your opportunity to get that data. Our kids deserve that data, so do their whānau. We need to discuss, in terms of attitudes and developing good attitudes towards school, we need to discuss the value of education and the importance of schooling. We need to focus on their successes, their strengths, and their aspirations for the future. Because even those kids who wouldn't fill out something about a role model still filled out something about what they want to do in the future. They all had aspirations for the future. And really important to this is a sense of belonging at school, which develops when students feel accepted and liked by their peers and their teachers. They feel connected to others, and they feel like a member of the school community. Learning needs to be relevant, and we need to put a lot more effort into ensuring that what we're teaching them curriculum-wise is linked to their real worlds, real lives, and imagined future selves. Okay? So when a student says something to us like, oh, I think I want to be a police officer like my uncle, we should be saying to them, okay, police officers need to be really good at communication. So you need to be, good at reading, writing, speaking clearly, getting your ideas across. We learn that in English. We learn that in... So you're actually making some connections between what they're learning at school and their imagined future selves. We need to continue to be positive about the rewards of a good education with kids and take advantage of students' strong sense of social motivation. Most students are extrinsically motivated, okay? They want the flash car. They want the flash house. They want to travel. They want to look after their families. They want to make their mum and dad proud. That's what drives them to go to school. Very few of them were intrinsically motivated, okay? So we need to actually not see that as a negative. Traditionally, the literature has positioned that as something negative. Our kids want the stamp or the ice block, or like my dad, if you pass school C, I'll buy you a car. I passed school C because I wanted that car. But the deal is I passed school C, whatever it takes to get our kids through. The thing is that we need to ensure that they're being asked to set goals and to monitor themselves, their achievement towards those goals, because that's what university and jobs are going to require them of the future. So there needs to be a mix. And we need to talk, I've already talked about career pathways. We need to make sure that we're having conversations with them that include something called back mapping. Okay, and back mapping is where we talk to young people about, what do you want to do when you leave school? Oh, I want to be a nurse. Okay, last time we talked, I asked you to go and find out where you could be a nurse in our local area. Where is that? Oh, it's Wairiki Polytech. Okay, Kapua. What are the entry requirements? Oh, it's this, this, and this. So what does that mean you need to do in year 13? What classes or courses do you need to do? Because you're in year 11 now. What are the year 12 prerequisites to those year? So you're actually helping kids to back map from where they want to be. It's a really important skill. And I've been doing it with my daughter for a long time. She changes her mind about what she wants to do, like she changes her clothes. She used to want to be, I have a Mr. Whoopee truck. Yeah. And my heart went down. I was like, oh. And I said to her, okay, Kapua, well, people who own Mr. Whoopee vans have to be really good at business. So you're going to have to go and do a business course somewhere. Where can you go and do a business course? She's like, oh. She went off. She thought she was just going to buy a Mr. Whoopee van, drive around the beaches, surf, eat ice cream. I ruined that for her. But the point of it is that we have to teach them that every time they change their mind, they have to back map again. It's not actually about what they want to do, it's about the exercise of back mapping. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about career pathways. And there are lots of good schools in Aotearoa, but some particularly good ones at Rotorua who are doing this back mapping work at least once a term with every child in their school. Can't leave it up to the guidance counsellors, the careers counsellors. They're too overworked doing their good mahi. Okay, my third point of interest is that familial and teaching role models are powerful in the lives of our kids and become more powerful, whānau in particular, in the lives of our rangatahi. Okay, so with the primary age kids, 26% of them chose a teacher as their main role model, unprompted. It says a lot about the importance of kaiako, okay, and how important they are in the lives of children. And 48% of all tamariki chose a whānau member, or more than one whānau member. And then as we get to secondary school, you can see the importance of whānau. They get more important, okay, because 60% of our kids chose whānau at that level. And surprisingly to me, given the hormones of teenagers and the judgmentalness of teenagers generally, 17% of them still chose their teachers as their key role model in their life. So what's interesting about this? Well, I think this is interesting because this is one of my role models, and I love this picture of her, Dame Whina. She's usually, portrayed as this holding the hand, looking gentle, and so on. But the reality is that she was ferocious, and she was a political change maker in the north, and she didn't take, suffer fools lightly. And I think this captures her beautifully, this picture. But the role model literature has more often than not focused on role models, the attributes that the role model needs to possess, and the behaviours that they need to express to be effective. What our data started to show us was actually the impact the role models were having on the mentee or the students' ambitions, motivation, choices and achievements. So we decided to focus on that. For Māori rangatahi in particular, role models exemplify culturally important ways of being, thinking and doing. Being tika, for example. You could be the flashiest person in the world, but if you're an egg, all anyone ever remembers about you is that you were an egg, So these kids kind of made reference to that idea, and it was critical to their choice in role model. So these are some of the people that the kids chose as their role models. You can see here, well, you might not be able to see, but the kids said things like, my mum got pregnant at 16 and has a PhD in working as primary healthcare manager for the whole of New Zealand. My nan, because she's been through a lot and she's been successful to the end. She worked in the Air Force and has done so many other things in her life and has always been happy with the outcome. I'll leave you to read some of those yourself. The kids weren't looking for flash guys as their role models. They were looking for people like them, from places like them, like the ones that they live in. They wanted role models that were actually from their community. And so we went through and analysed the literature, the data. And one of the things is we found that role models are influential in the life of rangatahi in 5 ways. The first is that they act as behavioural role models. Okay, so they show those young people how to perform a skill or achieve a goal. That by doing this, by moving out of Auckland for a little while, going and doing this course, treating people well, blah, 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 you can arrive here. They represent the possible. So they showed those young people that a particular goal is attainable. I can do this, so you can do it too. People who come from Tikipunga and Whangarei can achieve their dreams and goals and go off and become youth workers. And service their community, and be of service to their community. They're inspirational. So they motivate us to set inspirational goals and be courageous, things we never dreamed we could do, okay? Things we never thought of for ourselves because there's been nobody in our community who's done that before. They demonstrate, like I said before, the right way to do things, in line with our whānau, iwi, community, church, and so on values. Big values to come through were humility. It was really important, and not just for Māori, For most groups across Aotearoa, humility was a very important cultural value. Reciprocity, mana-enhancing interactions were talked about a lot, service ethic. And the fifth way that they influence young people is that they influence their self-stereotyping. So the stereotypes or the stories young people tell about themselves and their potential. So they either decrease the impact of negative self-stereotyping. You know, I didn't think that as a person who grew up in Te Koutou and Rotorua, I could do much more than what my family were doing there. But then I met this one person. I worked for her at the dairy, and she showed me, you know, those kinds of things, that Māori could do whatever they pleased. She went off to India for 5 years and trained to do this, and then she blew my mind. That's a true story. That's my story, you know. And they increase the influence of positive self-stereotyping. So for my daughter, for example, one of her cousins, when she said she wanted to be a lawyer, one of her cousins says, Māori are criminals, not lawyers, as a joke. He was joking. And she just looked at him like he was the dungiest person in the world. She was like, ho, don't you watch Māori TV? There's heaps of flash Māori. Look around you, there's heaps of flash. You know, like she was just appalled that he would even say and think that. She also can't read a joke, clearly, because he thought he was joking. And the data also tells us that Māori rangatahi show less interest in and decide against participating in fields where Māori are underrepresented. So this speaks to the whole idea of we can't be what we can't see. Okay? And it's not a motivational issue. It's not a performance issue. It's not that they don't believe they can do it. It's that they're just not drawn to it because there's nobody there that looks and sounds like them. Okay? So those things are really important with role models. Now, when I finished this particular grouping all of the data and doing the analyses on the data, what I was able to do was to develop a model with one of my tuakana. His name is Angus McFarlane. He's a sociocultural theorist who worked at Canterbury University. And he's probably taught me more than most other people have taught me in my life. And he helped me to develop something called the mana model. Because when we talk to teachers, whānau, and students about success at school, engagement, achievement, none of them use words like achievement. They didn't say, I want to achieve. They said, I want to stand with mana in this world. Pākehā students said, I want my family to feel proud of me, as proud as I am of myself. So what we realised was that this notion of mana, when we whakamaori'd the idea, this notion of mana was actually true for most young people at school. And so this model suggests is that student thinking, behaviour and mental well-being is motivated by a desire to achieve a sense of mana. Self-efficacy, the belief that they can achieve what they want to achieve, purpose, pride, and whaiwahitanga, belonging. They were chasing all of those things while they were at school. And there were 5 types of mana that they talked about the most. Now, there's lots of different ways that mana manifests in the world. Please don't go away from here saying, Melinda Weber says there are 5 mana. Because they're not. There's lots of different mana, okay? There are 2 main ways that mana is accrued or developed in a young person. One is tuku iho. We inherit our mana from our tupuna. Okay, I am a descendant of Hine Amaru, and I inherited her agricultural skills, her tenacity. I am a kumara just like her. Okay, I just need the right kinds of conditions for that to manifest in the world. Quite often schools aren't the right conditions that enable those things to manifest. So that's it, tuku iho. And then there's mana tuku. And tuku is the mana we give and take from each other via our interactions with each other. Okay? Mana is not something that you can get by doing 12 degrees. Okay, you just got 12 degrees. You don't necessarily have mana. Okay? Mana is your ability to use those degrees to positively transform the communities around you, to positively impact and add dignity to the lives of those around you. That is how mana is accrued. Okay? And we give and mana is only developed in relationship with the other. Okay? So when we manaakitanga people, we talk about manaakitanga all the time in education. Okay? But manaaki is a really important word, and it doesn't just mean to be hospitable. Okay? It's made up of 2 words. Mana, you know what that is, the thing that keeps our back straight and makes us feel good about ourselves. And aki, which comes from the word aki-aki. And aki means to nurture or cherish or encourage something. Okay, so when I have a sick baby and I walk up and down the hallway all night, bouncing it like this, whispering sweet nothings in its ear, I am aki-akiing that child, I'm cherishing it. So when you manaaki someone, you are cherishing their mana. Your actions are showing them that you acknowledge that they have mana in this world, and you are trying to uphold that mana. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about mana. And there were 5 types of mana discussed by the participants in my study, and so I'm just going to talk a little bit about those and how they manifest in young people. What I need you to know, though, is that the one along the bottom there, mana whānau, is the absolute imperative one, because without that, none of the other ones can develop. Okay, so that's why it's along the bottom and the others are resting upon it. Okay, so mana whānau. I realise I'm going over time, so I'm going to go through these quite quickly. Mana whānau is our connectedness to others and our collective agency. The idea that as a group we are stronger because of our connections to each other. Like a woven tapestry, okay? You've just got one weft, not particularly strong. Weave us all together and we're a taura. We're a rope, okay? So students need to believe, rangatahi need to believe, that they occupy a central and valued position in their whānau. And that includes their school whānau. That includes their alternative ed whānau, okay? Whatever organisation they're in, so that they can develop a positive sense of self-esteem and purpose. Mana whānau develops in our young people when they know that people care about them. When they've heard it, awaha. Okay? When they know what their academic strengths and interests are, and that others know what it is too. When they know that they can contribute meaningfully to the world around them. They actually have something to teach others. They are a tuakana, even though they're 5, or even though they're in year 9. And that others in their space, in their collective, recognise their mana. And of course, it manifests in the world when students demonstrate that they have high expectations of themselves. Aha ko te aha. Regardless of what is going on in their lives, these kids want to be successful. They want to achieve their dreams. That's a demonstration of mana whānau. And I'll leave you to read some of the other articulations of it in your own time. The second type of mana is mana ukaipo. Now, ukaipo, to my mind, is the most beautiful word in te reo Māori. It's a lot like tūranga waiwai, okay, which is that place we stand, where our feet are planted. But u is a breast, kai is to feed, and po is in the night. So ukaipo is a metaphor for a mother and a child breastfeeding in the middle of the night, the dead still of the night, when their child is not sick, and everything is perfect, and you know that is where you're supposed to be. Do you know when I drive to the far north, and I get to the top, well, mid-north, and I get to the top of the Brynderwan Hills, Te Hiringa Hauora is the name of those hills, and I get there and I see the Whangarei Harbour in front of me, my whole body goes, I'm home. That's ukaipo, okay? So the mana that comes from having that sense of ukaipo. Now, ukaipo is about belonging in relationship to place, okay, to spaces and places, including this space here, okay? Students need to feel belonging and connectedness. They need to whai wāhitanga, okay, to their environment and to others in that environment. Students thrive when they know that their culture, their interests, their strengths are valued in that particular context. So students develop mana ukaipo when they know that they belong, when they can articulate how they belong to this space. I belong because I came here with Rod, first of all, and then I met James, and me, Rod, and James went out and played a game of touch, and then I met these other people, and now we're all in this group. You know, that kind of, to be able to articulate that is articulating belonging and connectedness to others. And it's often related to a particular space. Okay, we start somewhere. That place becomes really important for them. I've moved away from Whangarei and Rotorua. It's still the centre of my universe, even though I'm not there. Okay? They know about where they live and go to school. They know their cultural knowledge and heritage, and they feel connected to others around that information. Many of the kids in this study that I did felt really proud to go to their school. They understood how their actions affected others. They actively participated in school activities like kapahaka, waka ama, manu kōrero, the athletics club, whatever it was. And they could compare and contrast different points of view respectfully because they understood that this group in this place contains diverse people. Okay, I can see my time coming down. Mana motu hake is embedded achievement and self-concept. It's when students have a secure sense of cultural identity and positive role models that they can aspire to be like. In essence, embedded achievement is an American term for when members of a particular group associate being a member of that group with success, with goal setting, with achievement, with thriving. So it's when Māori students associate being Māori with doing well at school, achieving their goals. It's when they believe that they're successful because they're Māori, not despite being Māori. They believe that their language, their culture, and their identity are an asset in their lives. Okay, that's embedded achievement. And you can see there that it develops when they know who they are, when they have positive role models, when they can name people in their group, cultural group, who have achieved success. Have those conversations with your young people. Ask them to tell you about people they aspire to be like. When kids are able to do this, when kids have mana motu hake, they often communicate with more clarity and confidence because they stand on a more secure platform that is themselves. Okay, manatū are a whole range of different social psychological competencies. Okay, so they're like qualities about a person. They include things that help those students to grapple with difference and complexity. So when they encounter some adversity, they don't just curl up in the fetal position and cry themselves to sleep in bed. Okay, just what I think I did when I was a teenager. They have the goods, the street smarts, to be able to cope and regroup and rebuild relationships to get on with things. So the things that were mentioned in particular were things like courage, tenacity, self-discipline and self-reliance, humility, self-reflection and kindness. So manatū develops and students know that they can learn and be successful when they know what they're good at and when they know what areas they need to work on. I'm going to move on to the next one, the last one, mana tangatarua. Mana tangatarua is the skills and knowledges that comes from being a member of a diverse world. Okay? Tangatarua means of two people, the mana that comes from two people. But it's actually a metaphor. It could be tangata maha, for example, of many peoples. Okay? Our babies don't just want to live in one world. My daughter, as a te reo Māori speaker, as a person who can rock with the rest of them in te ao Māori, also wants to participate in te ao Pākehā, and she also has Samoan whakapapa, so she wants to know how to operate in that space too. So students need the skills, the knowledge, and most importantly, the confidence to navigate two or more worlds with mental wellness, cultural competence, and by having an inclusive mindset. So kids who have mana tangatarua know they have something to teach others. They also know that everyone else has something to offer them. They know that their language, culture, and identity are an asset, and they know that other people's language, culture, and identity are assets too. So they're not just focused in on themselves. They actually value what other people bring to the learning equation, social equation. When they have these things, they can take risks in their learning. They try hard to pronounce people's names properly. They're open to new ideas and doing things differently. Really importantly, they're more likely to make decisions with moral courage and integrity. And they're mindful of the values and needs of others. Now, quite often when I'm working with kura, I will talk about the mana model, and then I will give them this blank one. Okay, and I will get them to sit down and ask them, I want you to go away and I want you to work with your kaiako. And I want you to put them in the centre. Instead of putting students in the centre, I want you to put your kaiako in the centre. And I want you to ask your teachers, how do they experience mana ukaipo in the school context? How do they feel connected to this place? Do they at all? What would they like to see more of? You can put anybody in the centre there, whānau. youth development workers, mentors, whoever it is, and ask them how they experience these different types of mana and what they would like to see happening in those different spaces. So that's the mana model. 47 seconds. I'm going to go through very quickly here. So to conclude this presentation, I want to leave you with additional counter-narratives to the ones my daughter reads about herself online, in newspapers, and in her school books, most recently as last week. My father descends from the Te Arawa Waka and the 8 iwi based in and around Rotorua, in particular Ngāti Whakaue. Today, I want to remember the deeds of the scholarly Makareti Papakura, the very beautiful woman in black and white up there, who was a guide, a scholar, and a writer. Makareti was really little when she was taught to recite her whakapapa and the history of her mother's iwi to Haurangi Ngāti Wāhiao. In 1926, Makareti became a student at Oxford University, the first woman from Aotearoa to go to Oxford University, where she studied anthropology. Her thesis was published 8 years after her death and was called The Old Time Māori. It tells of the life and customs of the Te Arawa people, particularly those customs related to child rearing. The Old Time Māori was the first published work of a Māori scholar. It is said that the secret to her success was being proud and confident in both the Pākehā and Māori worlds. She is remembered for her innovation, scholarship, and compassion. The man in the middle is Te Heko Te Rangi Hōhepa, who was a highly respected Te Arawa kaumātua, versed in tribal whakapapa. He, like many of us, was raised by his grandparents and trained in the traditional forms of whaikōrero, karakia, and waiata mō tiatia. Perhaps even more importantly, he was known for being gentle, peacemaking, and for being extremely humble, a revered trait in Te Ao Māori. And lastly, Te Ao Kapurangi, the carving, who had Ngāti Rangi Wewehi and Tapuika whakapapa. She was just a girl when she was captured by Hauraki, who was a Ngāpuhi leader, and forced to marry him. Hauraki took her back to the Bay of Islands, where she lived amongst them in the north. Years later, Ngāpuhi returned to the Bay of Plenty and found themselves at war with the people of Ngāti Whakaue. Hearing that Ngāpuhi were coming to fight them, some of the Te Arawa people fled to Makoia Island. Te Ao Kapurangi was desperate to save her relatives, so she begged the Ngāpuhi leader Hongihika to show them mercy. He said that he would only save the people who could pass between Te Ao Kapurangi's thighs at the time of the battle. Now, Te Ao Kapurangi was a clever and brave woman, and when the time came for the battle to begin, she jumped on shore and ran to Tamata Kapua, a wharenui on the island. She climbed up onto the roof of the building and sat with her legs on either side of the ridgepole. She shouted out to her people to fill the building so that they might be saved. Many people flocked inside, and that is how Ngāti Whakaue remain today, because everybody who wasn't in that whare was slaughtered. Ngāpuhi warriors were at a loss as they had let them enter because of the agreement Te Ao Kapurangi had made with Hongihika. Te Ao Kapurangi saved many lives that day, and she's remembered for her courage and resourcefulness. There is a well-known Te Arawa whakatauki that refers to Te Ao Kapurangi's act of courage and is often used when there is a large gathering in a whare, anō ko te whare whawhao a Te Ao Kapurangi, like the crowded house of Te Ao Kapurangi. Nō reira, e te whare whawhao o Te Ao Kapurangi, i te hunga e whakarongo ana i tēnei ahiahi, koe rā te ōpurepure o tōku nei whakapapa, o tōku nei whakaaro, o tōku nei wawata mō ngā tai tamariki moku Puna. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Sorry, I've been over long time. Tēnā te, tōrora.
Thank you again to Dr. Melinda Weber for sharing her mahi with us, but also, more importantly, her story and the collection of stories that she's gathered. I just, from your kōrero, that the speech that you gave, what I took from it was just the reclamation of our identity and how important our identity is, and also that you bear witness to a lot of stories and are able to gather them so that we can use them to inform us in our practice. That mana model, I know it's going to help a lot of us. So just thank you for your mahi and for the things that you continue to do, and please continue to do it. I just wanted to acknowledge that we are coming to the end of our conference today, but the richness of those stories that Dr. Melinda Weber and Rod Baxter gave us, we're going to continue that on, and I hope that you can reflect on how you bear witness to your young people's stories, because that's what it's about. It's about us seeing them and reflecting what they give us. And this young poet that's going to come and finish us up today, her name is Stella Pritchard, and she is a queen. I'm telling you, she's a queen. And so because it's the end of the day, I just want to make sure that we're all giving our energy and our mauri and just continuing to be there with her on her journey as she shares. Can I get you guys to give her a round of applause, please? Welcoming Stella Pritchard.
Pulefo Vailima Sakashi Pritchard, born 2003, March 28, a fighter named after two great men who helped my family. Two seas crossed to name a force of nature. My Ngā was the gateway to my feminine. My Kama was the type of man that leaves a chocolate under your pillow every night for every morning. My siblings are my giants. They be my protectors on the hardest days. Saturn Park, Manireo East School, St. Joseph's, through the cracks we resided. All the single kengers. It took a village to raise the Beyonce in my family. So, this one's for the Leons, the Jays, the Fonosisis, for the woman that protected me fiercely, like Singer, Linda, Juliet. Thank you. In our society, when you present as male, you're expected to be an alpha within the pack. We sign away your emotions, you sign a pact to never cry publicly, to speak mostly when spoken to be one of the boys, to choose wisely when revealing how you feel, mask it with anything but gay. To be a man, you have to act like a man, walk like a man. If you cry out, you're puffed. Why? Because backers, they don't know what to do with their emotions most times, but some things just can't disappear. Pray the gay away in New Zealand. What hits back is that violence isn't always the answer. To survive, the boys I know learned what other people told them. The boys I know would kick a bin to prove they're manly, assert their masculinity rather than shed a teardrop. We build our men to break, tell them to express their emotions, yet demonize a man's tears. They're taught to be afraid of fragile, paint insults on bodies they don't understand. So, to those who weren't ashamed to be seen with me, to Gabriel, the baddest Filipino I know, to both the Noahs, to Muffy Minaj, to Ken, thank you. In our society, when people assume you are male, you have to choose the woman you'll become. This one's for the JCs, the Akashas, the Fangs. This one's for Moe. Always know you'll be the mistress supreme. I've crossed the margins in the textbook, a place where only few people dare to go. I dream the day everyone will say my name. Truth is, I've been avoiding this poem because of how real it is. I've struggled being pushed out. Home hasn't always felt like home, but this body will always be my first. Love it. No matter what, I am a Pacifica trans woman, brave, beautiful, and bold. No matter what anyone says, I'll whisper, I love myself. Till it's the loudest sound in the universe, till my name, Stella Aingawhili Makarita Pritchard, is no longer a question. To go from that boy to this woman, to this queen, who in this very moment is slaying her Goliath with a sling, who in this very moment made peace with all her demons, when this very moment feels loved. Thank you.
Tēnā no tātou e te whānau whānui. We've just been gifted a koha that tells us your story. E hine, no reira. Mai tēnei ngākau ka hukura ki a koe. Mai ngā ngākau o ngā whānau kua hui hui mai nei. We're all going to sing Tūtira Mai Ngā Iwi together, because Tūtira Mai Ngā Iwi is about standing up as one in unison and unity for whoever you are and wherever you come from, you are welcome. So we're all going to stand up and do that, eh, fam? Sweet as. Sweet as. Tūtira mai toru whā. Tūtira mai ngā iwi aue, tātou tātou e. Tūtira mai ngā iwi aue, tātou tātou e. Whai a te maramatanga, me te aroha e ngā iwi, ki a patapatahi. Tātou, tātou, pūritia ki a mau, kisi au we hi au we hā. Nō reira, I just wanted our ehine over there to feel the aroha that you all have for her, for sending your energy for her kōrero. Thank you so very much for your presence. Yeah.
Awesome. We have amazing notices. Yay! Woohoo! Okay, listen up, all right? Tomorrow, we got to be in here by 9 a.m., okay? 9 a.m., all right? We also want to let you know that there is merchandise that's available, some hoodies and some T-shirts. If you look at the artwork, it was made by a beautiful wahine named Oceana Olsen from Otutahi, Christchurch. She's a beautiful woman, and she made the artwork that you see, okay? So I want to promote her. The other thing we need to promote is just the well-being space up on level 2. So anytime you need a break or a space, just go up there. We have the pear tree here. Can I have any pear tree people here? Cool, sweet, that's all good. There's a well-being space on level 2, so anytime you need a bit of a break and a bit of a chill, utilize that space. But Cam is going to announce a really exciting, no, you've got to do the not so exciting one first, then the exciting one, right? So we've got some exciting notices about tonight, but first Cam is going to just bring up one of the notices, all right?
Is it this? Is it this one? Okay, I'm not meant to be laughing. Who's staying at who's staying at the Distinction Hotel tonight? Put up your hands. Awesome. For those that have their hands up, are you missing a little something? Am I going to have access to your buffet later? If you're here and this is yours and you don't have access to your room, these will be with our whānau done at registration. But get in quick, because after 7 o'clock and when the staff bugger off home, you'll have to wait until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Oh, it is yours? Yeah. Can I? Oh, yep. Lucky winner number 1. Thank you so much. Hey, excuse me, koha. No, I'm sorry. All right, we in Renuf 2, which is the room just out there. At the other kokona. I say kokona because I can't specify the exact location, and because this building is shaped the way that it is, all of it is a kona because it's a circle, right? So in the kokona, Renoff 2, we've got a quiz happening tonight at about 6 o'clock. It'll be an hour. There's 4 rounds. We encourage you to come because as much as it is important to come to the formalised workshops and the structured Keynote kōrero, another amazing way to reinvigorate those relationships that you have and to potentially connect with those that you haven't yet done is to come and have some social time with us. So from 6 till 7, Marina and I will be taking you through a quiz. It's a little soft sojourn on our Waka. 4 different categories, 4 rounds, 1 hour, and teams of 8? Teams of 8. So look amongst you, and I'll put up your hands. Who's interested in the quiz after this? Sweet. So with those with your hands up, look around at those with your hands up. Those will be your teamies. So we're congregating over in Renoff 2 at about 6 o'clock.
Cool. Another thing you need to know is that it's cash bar, so we're raising funds for the Gender Minorities Aotearoa charity, which is a charity, I'm going to read this so I don't say it wrong, by and for transgender people, including non-binary, intersex, and Rāwhiti Tapui. GMA offers information, advocacy, and wraparound support for transgender people of all ages, ethnicities, and backgrounds. So it's going towards a great cause, okay? If you need to freshen up, go to the bathroom, sprinkle some water on your face, and just come back and smile, okay? I know we're going to get there, fam. Come and have fun with us. Join in the quiz. It's free, apart from the koha for Gender Minorities Aotearoa.
Awesome, whānau. So in closing, we started this day off with a pōhiri, which mitigated the need for us to do a karakia timatanga, but we've reached the end of our day and our journey, so we're going to do a karakia whakamutunga. The way that this is going to work, and take this wherever you go, because legit, it's the most accessible, approachable way to teach whānau how to do karakia. Do you know how to copy and paste on a keyboard, on a computer? Sweet. So I'm going to be the copier, and you guys are going to be the paste. Ka pai whānau? So I'll do a line, I'll flick my hand out, and you guys paste what you've heard. Ka pai? Ka pai, mauri ora kia tātou. Anō reira, ko te mihi tēnei kia koutou katoa, ko tai mai nei ki tēnei kaupapa, kia hāpai ake i o koutou ake mahi, ngā rangatira mo a pōpō kei wainga nui i o koutou spaces and places me ki. Anō reira, he mihi aroha, he mihi maioha, he mihi manahau tēnei kia tātou katoa. In closing, whānau, me kara kia tātou. Unuhia, unuhia. Unuhia ki te uru. Tapu nui. Kia wātea. Kia māma. Te ngākau. Te tinana. Te wairua. I te ara takatū. Ko ia rā. E rongo. Whakairia ake. Ki runga. Kia wātea. Kia wātea. Ai rā kua wātea. Hau pai mārire. Ka pai kia tātou katoa. Remember, 6 to 7 in the foyer for quiz. Enjoy your guys' night. Come and talk to us. Come talk some kaka with us in there. It's going to be amazing.